In response, the Chief Constable of Police Scotland, Sir Ian Livingstone, has said this today: "It is right for me as Chief Constable to clearly state that institutional racism, sexism, misogyny and discrimination exist." He continued, "Police Scotland is institutionally discriminatory and racist." Can I ask the First Minister for his response to the Chief Constable's statement?
First Minister.
Can I thank Douglas Ross for raising this issue? Can I first and foremost commend Sir Ian Livingstone, the Chief Constable of Police Scotland, for acknowledging institutional racism and indeed misogyny and other discriminatory behaviours within Police Scotland.
So there we have it. According to outgoing Chief Constable Sir Ian Livingstone, Police Scotland is institutionally racist. Now, why he comes to this conclusion very shortly before he leaves the job, I'm not quite sure. But everyone seems to be congratulating him. Well done, this is a huge step forward. But surely, if the bloke's been in charge of Police Scotland for many years and it's institutionally racist, surely people should be saying, "What on earth have you been doing? This is really awful." But for some strange reason, they seem to be saying, "Well done, this is fantastic." Now, the Scottish Police Federation, the Association of Police Officers, is not so happy. They've quite understandably said that they are deeply offended by the implication that the Scottish Police Force in general is racist. So what does it mean to say that Police Scotland is institutionally racist? Well, to be honest, it doesn't mean very much at all. I made a video recently about the Scottish Funding Council. They issued a document to universities where universities could declare themselves to be institutionally racist, and all you had to do was cut and paste the name of your university and put it into the document. Then there's your admission. Nothing about how you check to see if you are institutionally racist. That's just assumed. You know, everything's racist, every organisation's racist. Even though you can't actually put your finger on where it is, it just is known to be true. And this is just an expression of critical race theory. But whenever you hear the term anti-racist, that's what Police Scotland now says. They say we're anti-racist. It's not good enough to be non-racist, you have to be anti-racist. That is code for you've got to swallow critical race theory. And the idea of critical race theory is if you say, I think races should all just get on together and let's just treat everyone the same, treat each other with respect and civility, they say, no, you're a racist if you think that. Because unless you think different races should be treated differently, then you're a racist. So Police Scotland, in declaring themselves institutionally racist and anti-racist, what they're actually doing is adhering themselves to critical race theory, which they shouldn't be doing. Anyway, so what evidence have they got for it? Well, as far as I can see, nothing much. But notice there as well, they're saying that they're also racist and sexist and homophobic. But you know, there have been racist comments heard. You know, what might those racist comments have been? There might have been things like, I don't believe black applicants should get special treatment when they apply to be police officers, because a lot of people would say that's racist. That's a racist comment. I mean, sexist. I mean, some feminist campaigners think it's sexist the way some men sit on a seat. So that could be examples of sexism. I mean, homophobic. Maybe some officers didn't want to drive a police car decorated like the cardboard plate of the 3-year-old's birthday party during Pride Month. Again, that would be classed as homophobia within the police force. So when they say they've come across these comments, I really think in the vast majority of cases, if you or I heard them, we'd probably think, well, that's actually just a perfectly valid alternative viewpoint. Now, it could be that there have been people who've said things, made comments that were really out of order. Maybe, you know, they needed to be taken aside for a quiet word, or maybe in some cases they need to say, well, you cannot be a police officer if you hold opinions like that. That's absolutely fine. And if they want to give examples of that, that's absolutely fine by me. But that wouldn't be institutional. Declare it institutional, like this is everywhere, this is insidious, this is pervasive throughout Police Scotland. So who's to blame? I mean, Sir Ian Livingstone, you assume? But then who was the Justice Secretary overseeing Police Scotland for many, many years? What was his name again? Oh yeah, that's the one, Humza Yousaf. I mean, the Scottish Government has obviously been overseeing Police Scotland, I think, throughout its existence. SNP-led government. So the SNP institutionally racist as well? So when they say they're institutionally racist, what they mean is they're bowing to critical race theory. In other words, they're acknowledging and endorsing the political ideology of the Scottish Government, which, needless to say, the police force shouldn't be doing. Now, I've also got the report here. I'm going to have a quick look at a couple of sections. to show you. The report was done by the Equality, Diversion, Inclusion and Human Rights Independent Review Group. As soon as you see equality, diversity and inclusion, you know that that's reflecting a particular political ideology. They like to think it doesn't, but it does. And a lot of people don't agree with that ideology, but tough if you want to be in Police Scotland. So it says, we recognise that the Chief Constable was the first Chief Officer in the United Kingdom to state that he will lead an anti-racist police service, and we commend this commitment. So the first in the UK to acknowledge that his police service is, institutionally racist, going to be anti-racist. You get congratulated for that. So it's obvious they don't think he's actually admitting to something that's bad. They think he's actually doing something that's good in saying that the police force is institutionally racist. Right, another comment here. We've heard repeatedly that the culture of policing in Scotland has been influenced by demographic change to the workforce over the last 20 years. In particular, a generational shift towards more liberal social attitudes. This trend was seen as mirroring changes in society at large. However, there's a perception that attitudes within the service are still catching up with society. Okay? In other words, the police officers, particularly older ones, they're not progressive enough. They don't agree with the Scottish government enough and their so-called liberal progressive values. Incoming probationers are said to be both more enlightened and more likely to speak up and challenge a traditional command and control culture. More enlightened. In other words, because they've just come through the school system of like wall-to-wall indoctrination, maybe university as well, so they're more enlightened. They're better placed for their career within the politicised Police Scotland. They're more likely to challenge a traditional command and control culture. I mean, within the police force, do you not need some command and control culture? I don't know what the alternative to that is, I don't think. However, it was reported to us that this willingness to speak up and challenge ebbed away the longer officers served in the service. Another way of looking at that might be that these younger idealists, as time passes, they've come to have a more realistic view of some of these issues. But oh no, as far as they're concerned, the young ones coming straight from university or straight from school, they're the enlightened ones. I mean, it's the same with lots of other careers as well. There's this attitude. It talks about banter. Banter's been a problem again. This is a feminist theme. The idea is that banter is what men do when they're together. When they have a laugh with each other, they might joke each other, rib each other, etc. And that's called banter. And the idea is that banter is bad because it can be a bit insensitive or whatever. Now, I think there might be a bit of a sort of gender difference here. Maybe men are a bit more sort of brutal with each other. When they're having a joke, they might be, say things that, I don't know, a bit close to the bone or whatever. Whereas women might be a bit more sensitive. Like, oh no, don't say that, you might upset them. So maybe a bit of a difference. But generally, the idea is there within feminist thought that banter is something that bad men, or in other words men, same thing, it's something that men do, so it's a problem. And that philosophy is coming into Police Scotland. And what that will do is it will restrain a lot of men from just their natural camaraderie in the police service. They would just get on, they'd have a laugh together, but they're encouraged to see that as a problem. That's something that needs to be eliminated. What else does it say? It says that the Police Scotland needs to ensure that equality, diversity, inclusion, human rights is embedded in the promotion process. Well, at least they're open about it. So if you want to get to the top, toe the line. Look at Sir Ian Livingstone. How did he get to the top? By toeing the line with every politicisation of the police force, police service, sorry, I should say, including this final one, declaring it institutionally racist. He's the sort of person that gets to the top. If you want to get to the top as well, you know the way, don't you? You just have to endorse all this as well. Right, there's another section in the official report, guarding against backlash. You hear this sort of thing quite commonly. In other words, people who disagree, it's not that they have a valid perspective, it's not that we need to listen to them, they're a problem that needs to be solved. In this case, they're called the backlash. So if I was a police officer, I would be regarded as part of the backlash, I guess. Anyway, let's read it. In our experience, there's always a risk of backlash when driving equality, diversity, inclusion and human rights. We have observed some evidence of this in our work to date. For example, we encountered the sense that minoritized staff are receiving preferential treatment, being needy or getting more than they deserve, a concern that diversity staff associations are out to get their colleagues or not acting in the interests of the overall workforce, and concerns about how EDIHR issues are taken forward in divisions which are less diverse. Okay, so if you think people shouldn't get preferential treatment, then you're part of the backlash. You're a problem that needs to be solved within Police Scotland. I mean, all these like the LGBT police organisation, I'm sure there'll be like a black minority ethnic one as well. So people look at those and think they're trying to catch the rest of us out. They're trying to sort of create a culture in which they can complain about their colleagues. That seems to be what's suggested. I think in many cases that might be absolutely true. But again, if you have concerns, they don't need to investigate them. The same as they don't need to investigate to find if Police Scotland's institutional racist. You just know it is. In the same way, when people have these concerns, they don't need to investigate them to see if they're true. You just know they're not true because they don't fit with the philosophy. This can manifest as an all lives matter standpoint, which undermines the experiences and contributions of those with protected characteristics or as pressure to get back to bread and butter issues when there are constraints on resources. So if you're someone who says, you know, all lives matter, let's just treat everyone equally, can't we? Isn't it divisive to try and focus on particular groups? Well, if you think of those, again, you're part of the backlash, you're part of the problem. We want to get back to bread and butter political policing issues, like preventing crime and helping people and that sort of stuff. No, if you do that, if you want to be doing that instead of equality and diversity training, again, you're part of the backlash. We would urge Police Scotland to be alert to the risks of a backlash, particularly in terms of the way EDIHR is promoted and communicated across the service. Okay, let's move on to the final page. Community impact. It talks about the legitimacy of policing communities could be compromised if Police Scotland doesn't adopt all of this, you know, equality, diversity, and inclusion stuff. In terms of legitimacy of policing different communities, if Police Scotland declares itself to be institutionally racist, what does that do to its legitimacy across all communities in Scotland? Surely that's saying to a lot of people in Scotland, you can't trust us, and when we deal with you, we're probably treating you unfairly. It's beyond belief that anyone thinks it's a good idea for the police to be making that sort of general comment. There's the membership of this group that's advising Police Scotland is on the back. I don't know most of them, but one of them's Rowena Arshad, who is a lecturer, professor probably at Moray House School of Education. So she's been inducting teachers into a personal sort of hard left progressive ideology for many decades, I would imagine. I've read things that she's written, but one of the things she does is try and impose her critical race theory on trainee teachers, and then encourage them to go into the classroom to impose that ideology on the pupils. But because she's so good at that, they thought they'd invite her to come and impose her ideology on Police Scotland as well. And that's what she's allowed, no doubt being paid to do. So what have we got here? We've got a case of Police Scotland being politicised yet again. It's quite interesting, wasn't it? When we had a First Minister who was a sort of LGBT fanatic, we had Police Scotland waving their trans flags and all that sort of thing. But now we've got a race-obsessed First Minister, and Police Scotland is suddenly institutionally racist. That's interesting, isn't it? Now, Police Scotland now is inevitably going to be unfair to its own staff. It's going to have a preferential treatment for people of minority ethnic groups, and it's also going to be clamping down even more on freedom of thought. If you don't go along with critical race theory, if you just think everyone should be treated the same and let's all get on well together, one big happy family, or if you think that, you're a racist and there's no place for your thinking in Police Scotland. And if your intention is to go up the career ladder, well, you know what you have to do. You have to parrot the political philosophy of the SNP. This is Police Scotland, but this is repeated across education, across the NHS, social work, etc., and it's the indoctrination and restriction of adults, and it has a huge impact on the Scottish political scene. Right, this will also mean that Police Scotland cannot be fair with dealing with the public. If you adopt an ideology that says people from different racial groups must be treated differently, otherwise it's not fair, otherwise that's not equity, how can Police Scotland deal with the public fairly on the basis of that philosophy? Well, they can't. They can't. It's as simple as that. One of the most serious issues is this just invites a sense of victimhood. It's saying to a lot of members of the public, you must lose trust in us. You cannot trust us. And the police needs moral authority. If they come along and say, you can't park your car there, I mean, in our society, being a racist is about as low as you can go. I mean, that really is, you're the scum of the earth if you're a racist. So if the police are saying, we're racist, you're not allowed to park your car there, people are inclined to say, who do you think you are? You bunch of racists. At least I'm not a racist. Okay, I may not park my car in the right place. At least I'm not a racist like all you lot. It just destroys the moral authority of the police. And the police already will have to deal with an awful lot of very stroppy barrack room lawyers who, I know my rights, you can't tell me what to do. And although quite a lot of those, particularly from minority ethnic groups, will now feel hugely emboldened that whatever the police say to them, whatever interaction they have, they can come back and say, you're treating me unfairly because I'm black. You admitted it. You're institutionally racist. I know that. You're racist, and that's why you're doing that to me. And the poor old police officers on the ground are going to have to put up with that. I mean, Sir Ian Livingstone, he's not going to face that. Humza Yousaf, he's not going to face that. But the police officers on the ground are going to have that on an industrial scale. So Humza Yousaf has been willing to sacrifice the effectiveness and neutrality of Police Scotland on the altar of his own embittered, race-obsessed political ideology. So that's the SNP. Now let's go back to my clip at the beginning from the Scottish Parliament. So what do the Conservatives do about it? Do they stand up in the Parliament and say, this is really wrong that you're imposing this controversial ideology of race on Police Scotland, and it's really counterproductive for Police Scotland to be politicised and to accept this ideology. It's extremely destructive and dangerous. That's what the Conservatives should be saying, but not a bit of it. Of course, they go with the flow. They say, oh, yeah, okay. If someone's criticising Police Scotland, then sort of we can blame the SNP for it, and that will do. The Conservatives don't think for themselves. As my friend put it, their policy attitude is basically, we'll have half a pint of what they're having. I mean, in this case, they seem to be having the full pint. They're just going along completely with the SNP's ideology and the politicisation of Police Scotland. So if you're a police officer and you're absolutely fed up with this, I quite understand that, but I would say if you don't like it, don't vote for it. And not voting for it means not voting for any of the parties in the Scottish Parliament. Vote for the Scottish Family Party instead. Now in this video I was going to include another section about Sheku Bayo, who was a gentleman who died while interacting with the police. I'm going to tell the story, and Humza Yousaf seems determined to make him into a Scottish version of George Floyd. That's an ongoing story, and it's quite a story to tell. But it was going so long, I'm going to save it for another video. So do subscribe, and you can see that within the next few days. Thanks for watching.